Welcome to Slow and Steady, the podcast where you get to follow along as we figure out how to build and run a SaaS. I'm Benedikt. Today is November 13th, and this is episode number 17. Brian is on vacation, so I'm joined by a special guest. It's Peter Suhm of Branch. Hey, Peter.
Hey, Benedikt.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I thought I was going to do the whole, hi, I'm Peter, and I'm feeling whatever thing.
So how are you feeling?
I'm feeling it, man.
I'm
excited to be in this podcast, and I'm not the one who's going to edit it.
Yeah, that's going to be me. But I hope let's hope I don't have to do a lot of editing.
Oh, you don't know me then.
So interesting fun fact. I was on your podcast a couple of weeks ago. Oh, actually, now it's actually a couple of months. But I feel like it was one of the things that started getting me back into podcasting. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I take credit for that.
Yeah, you absolutely can. Like it was so much fun that I decided, hey, I should probably do a podcast again. And out of pure luck, Brian apparently was also thinking about starting another podcast. And I think Jane connected the both of us and ended up doing this one.
Nice. Yeah, I listen to it every week.
Thank you.
I know my co-host Matt listens as well while he walks his dog in the morning.
Oh, nice. So, hi, Matt. Hi, Matt's dog. So your podcast is called Out of Beta, right?
Yeah, that's right.
When did you, how did you start it?
Well, we started it because we were going to be in Tiny Seed. And both Matt and I thought about how we kind of wanted to document that a little bit. And we were enjoying the other podcasts in this little bootstrapper niche that we're in. And a lot of people were saying that they wanted more of these kinds of shows. So it just felt like there was like almost like a market for it. But then at the same time, Matt and I, we talk all day long in Slack anyways. And it's like, it's a nice way to catch up. And yeah, maybe we don't share like the juiciest details in the podcast, but still like, it's a nice way to share our progress. And especially for Matt, it's like, people listening to the podcast, it's like, a lot of them are in his target audience as well for his product summit.
Yeah, I can see that. So what juicy details are you leaving out?
Well, that's going to be paid extra material later on, so I wouldn't be able to share it here.
Okay, fair enough. So you're in Tiny Seed with your recent product called Branch, right? How did you get to building Branch? And Branch is a continuous integration platform for WordPress. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm trying to figure out these days if that's actually the best positioning for it. Because a lot of people in the WordPress space probably don't know what continuous integration means. So right now I'm kind of saying you can use it even if you don't know what that means. But it's not the best positioning right now. But yeah, it's basically like a Travis CI or a Circle CI, but specifically for the WordPress use case. And then it has a pretty heavy focus on deployment as well. So it's like build, test, and deploy your WordPress projects. Mm-hmm. I built it because I had another product for WordPress called WP Pusher, which has been like a side project for me for the past, it's like 4 years, something like that, which is a deployment tool for WordPress. And it's just a WordPress plugin, so it's not a big fancy SaaS product. It's just a plugin that people download and install to their WordPress sites. And then once they do that, WP Pusher, the plugin, can basically fetch all their updates from GitHub or Bitbucket or wherever they host their code. So it's fairly popular in the WordPress space. A lot of people know about it, but it's not something I've been able to do full time. Then Branch is basically like the big vision where it's like it has a lot more features and it tries to solve some of the problems that people are running into with WP Pusher. Like, what if I don't want to, upload all my dependencies? And what if I have some tests I want to run before I do a deployment? Stuff like that. So because it's a SaaS, I can do a lot more. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of why I decided to build it.
So, but you said a lot of people don't get it in the WordPress community. How do you try to overcome that? Do you think the positioning isn't right, or what are you going to do about that?
There's a lot of talk about these things in the WordPress community right now. There's a lot of leveling up, I think, which is what I'm trying to basically bank on a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I think actually in WordPress right now, there's actually a lot of people looking for a continuous integration solution for their products, even though they don't really understand what it is. And that's maybe why they're finding it hard to start using something like Circle CI. I mean, I've been a developer for a long time, and I've been using other tools like Circle CI on my own projects for a long time, and I still find them really complicated. Mm-hmm. So being in the WordPress space, it's like, first of all, when you look at all people doing WordPress websites, a lot of them aren't really developers. And then even when you look at the developers, a lot of them are like self-taught, or, you know, I mean, they didn't have like computer science degrees and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of these things that can be a little intimidating if you have to learn it all from scratch. So I think my job is to build a tool that's also educational. That's the thing.
So it's like my very first continuous integration tool.
Well, if WordPress is your very first, but the thing is, like with WP Pusher, I have agencies using that plugin. Even though it's a simple plugin, they use it on like 250 different client sites. It's like it's pretty significant tool for them, and it's like a big important part of their workflow. And so I mean, there are people doing WordPress websites for a living, and they should have tools like this available, is what I think.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. So it sounds like you have like two different types of customers then, right? Like one the very professional agencies who realize, hey, we need a tool like this, and Branch is probably the easiest for WordPress because like it knows about WordPress, and you don't have to, I don't know, configure Travis CI until it actually deploys WordPress applications.
Yeah.
And the other ones are people who just like want to level up their WordPress development skills and feel like they should look into this new buzzword called continuous integration. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, on one end of the spectrum, you have like really advanced agencies. They're already using like Buddy or Travis or something like that. And it's like they have some pains around that where it's not really built for WordPress. And on the complete different end of the spectrum is like people who, you know, they're using Git. That's like the lowest. Like if you're not using Git, you can't really use my product. But they're using Git because they understand that it's nice to have version control of your code. But it's like, you know, they're sitting on their computers and running all their build scripts locally and like committing it to a Git repository and trying to push it from there. And it's like, you know, they start to think, hey, there must be a better way for me to do this. Like, I don't like being in this weird like FTP client thing that they gave me. And that's when they start to look for solutions, and they find WP Pusher or hopefully Branch.
So how do people find you these days? Like, is it mostly via organic search, like basically WordPress continuous integration, or are you using some different tactic?
I definitely hope this interview is going to, change things. No. So, I mean, I haven't really started marketing this tool very hard yet. So basically, I think I'm basically still on like my launch tweet or my announcement tweet, which was exactly a year ago, where I basically had only a very simple prototype that only worked on my local machine. And I wrote a manifesto because that's what you have to do in these circles. And I put it online, and a lot of people, I think that tweet has more than 60,000 people, saw it on Twitter. So nice. It ended up with quite a lot of engagement. And that's kind of like, some of those people signed up to an early access list. So, basically the only two ways I've found like users so far is like basically people who've seen that on Twitter or people who know me from WP Pusher.
Mm-hmm. So it's like the next level up from WP Pusher, and then people like it's basically an evolution of the previous product, right?
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. WP Pusher is like 10% of Branch.
Yeah, makes sense. And are you eventually planning to retire the plugin, or is it always going to be like the free option? Like you have a free plan, so that's probably not true, but is it like
there's still WP Pusher is still justified. It's very simple, and for a simple use case, it's still like what I would use myself. So it definitely still has its place. I think what I might do one day, like I could see WP Pusher just be, like a thing that's provided by Branch, potentially for free as well. But right now, no. I mean, WP Pusher is an important piece of my runway right now, together with the tiny seed money. So I'm not going to touch that anytime soon.
I think you mentioned it. How long are you running WP Pusher? 4 years or something like that?
Yeah, around 4 years, I think. It's been on the side. Like I've done tons of different things in the time. But WP Pusher is just like kind of survived on its own, like even if there's been a year where I haven't really touched it or done anything. So there's been no like development on that product for like 2 or 3 years. It's just like, a support email once in a while, and that's kind of it.
What did you do, like other than WP Pusher, like while that was running on the side? What was your main gig during that time?
In 2015, I was starting a startup with some friends in Denmark. We thought it was going to be like our big thing. We pitched it to a German startup accelerator, Axel Springer, if you know that one, in Berlin. Yeah. So, but eventually, like that didn't really work out. It wasn't the ideal co-founder team either. I learned a lot. I almost sold the Pusher for 10K at that time because I wanted to go full time on the new thing. And W Pusher was super early, and it's like it only had a little bit of revenue. I'm so glad I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And then after that, like I've been freelancing, especially with one startup called TimeKit, which is a Danish startup, but also like based in San Francisco, and they raised money over there, went through an accelerator. But I was just kind of like, I was there from pretty early on, but I never became a co-founder because I couldn't really decide if I wanted to double down on that or like my own projects. And so,
yeah. So, and like WP Pusher, what a name, by the way, basically kept growing during all that time and eventually decided, hey, let's go back into building my own products, or like, how did that transition happen?
Yeah, it's like it was harder and harder to ignore it, right? Because it's still not enough to like support me full time, but it's still enough that, the tiny seed money is going to last a long time if I wanted to, because it's paying like a big chunk of my salary right now. And yeah, especially when you consider like how little time it requires, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, that's cool. At what point, like, did you decide to stop consulting and go full time on? Was Branch like the next step after consulting, or what did you do?
Yeah, so I actually the other startup I worked for, they scaled down a bit. So I knew for a while that I was going to be not going to work for them. I knew that for a couple of months, and I was like, I need to find a new thing. This is like my time to work on a new project. And I had the idea for Branch in the back of my mind. I've had it for a few years, but it's like, who really wants to build like a continuous integration service? It sounds like a pain to build, right? But then over the years became more and more confident with tools like Docker and servers and stuff like that. So actually about that time, I actually felt like I could pull this thing off. So I decided to give it a go. And that's when I built a prototype. And then when I saw how that was basically received on Twitter, is around the same time that Rob started talking about TinySeed. So I actually reached out to TinySeed quite early, like way before they even started doing applications, and started the talks with them. So basically, I mean, I knew that if I wasn't going to join TinySeed, I'd probably have to like find some more consulting work. But I basically decided to double down on Branch and just like see if I could impress them, and just I could do that for a couple of months, right? Because I had WP Pusher on the side to help not burn all my savings.
Yeah, that's always nice.
Yeah.
You touched a little bit on the tech stack, and being a developer myself, that's always interesting to me. Like, how does Branch work? Like, what's the tech stack like? What components play together?
Oh man, I think I'm on the 4th version right now, actually.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, like the first version was literally just like, a loop that in a Python script that runs Docker run. So basically just like plows everything into a Docker container. There was like 1 or 2 iterations, I think, on that thing. And that's the version that I screencasted and put on Twitter when I started talking about it. And then when I saw how people kind of, how it was received on Twitter, and I took a few prepayments for it as well, just to kind of like see if people actually was going to be willing to pay for it. The funny thing, you probably wouldn't be surprised about this, but like one of them out of 6 people is using the product right now, but not paying for it. So it's like, you can't really trust those prepayments, but I think that's what people are kind of realizing these days. But yeah, then the next iteration, so one of my good friends is a really good Python and Docker developer. That's like his stack. And he suggested that I looked into Docker multi-stage, which is basically, it's almost like a poor man's or like a simple CI/CD thing that's kind of inside of Docker. So basically you have one Docker file with multiple basically containers in it that you loop over. And that's like a really efficient way to basically build code. So I built, again, like 1 or 2 versions kind of on that, using that method. And he helped me out build that. And then he was too busy to finish it. And I had no idea how to basically deploy that stack and what he built with me. And then, so basically how it worked was we had a little API that we've built, which would basically delegate all the work to the Docker server, right? Which was the build server. And so we had that thing and we kind of designed this little API. And then it kind of occurred to me, like, is there a way that I could basically outsource this part of it, just like for the MVP? And I looked into Amazon and their like continuous integration offerings, and it wasn't really like their APIs wasn't really didn't really have the features I would need. But then later on, I looked into Google Cloud, and they have like quite a few different tools that you can kind of string together. And it ended up having almost the same API as the thing we built. So honestly, it took me like a day or like a couple of hours to migrate the whole thing to run on Google Cloud. And then, that's like, it's just infinitely simpler if you can outsource a lot of that cloud server container work to someone like Google, and is 100 times more expensive probably than running it yourself. But for now, it's still worth it totally.
Yeah, definitely.
And the thing is, it's like super flexible. So I'm still relying on the Docker multi-stage build thing. So I could just, pretty easily build my own thing and just pull it out of Google Cloud. There's nothing in Branch right now that's dependent on Google Cloud. It's just like a utility provider, right? Like plugged into that right now. So that's pretty cool.
Interesting.
How it works right now.
That's cool. And like, is it a PHP application, or I heard Python there?
So
Python.
The app itself is Laravel. So it's like Laravel and a lot of Vue.js in there as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think, like, did you mention it on the last episode of Out of Beta that you used to be a Ruby on Rails developer? Is that true?
For a short time, yeah. That's kind of like how I started my career.
Oh, interesting. Like you started as a Ruby developer and ended up as a Laravel developer?
Yeah. I've done like WordPress stuff since I was in high school because it was like the easiest way to build websites and stuff like that. But then back, like, I didn't really know about any PHP frameworks back then. I think Cake was around and maybe Symfony was probably around as well, but I didn't really know about them. And then I remember like stumbling upon Ruby somewhere online, Ruby on Rails, which is built by a Dane. So got to support that. And I remember I was on vacation with my parents. It was like probably, I think it was after my first year in college or university. And I actually dropped out to kind of like work on my own projects and stuff like that. And while like working on something, I found Ruby on Rails while I was on vacation with my parents. And I spent like a week just like reading about it. And there was like a famous Rails tutorial where you build a Twitter thing. But like, I don't remember what it's called, Michael something. He had like a Rails tutorial where you built a Twitter. And I was just really impressed by that. And it used testing and Git and like all this stuff was kind of new to me. So I remember one of the things I did was I followed everyone on like Danish Twitter that I could find like doing Ruby on Rails. And then one of them posted like a job ad for like someone he was consulting for in Copenhagen. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just
that's the opportunity.
I'll just apply for it. And this like, so when I had the interview with them was like 2 weeks after the first time I even heard about Ruby. And they decided they wanted to hire me.
Nice.
And it was like those people working on that project is probably like the best Ruby on Rails developers in Denmark, at least at the time. And they were consulting for this company. And I think kind of the idea was that the owner of the company would hire a junior and then basically try to see if he could like pour all the wisdom from those consultants into this junior developer. So honestly, I was there for like almost half a year. until I realized that the reason I quit university or dropped out of university was to start my own business, not to have a job. So I quit actually. But until then, I don't think I did anything like real. I don't remember like doing anything real, except just like learning from these people. It was amazing, dude. I like the way they taught me was they wrote unit tests for me, like empty unit tests, or like, failing unit tests. And then they passed them over to me and was like, hey, like your job is to get this to green. Like how amazing is that for like a junior developer to learn that way?
That's awesome. I never thought about doing it that way, but yeah, I can see how it works.
Yeah. And then like after a while, that's probably like a year or two after that is when Laravel kind of came about. So yeah, like 5 or 6 years ago, probably when I saw Laravel, like one of the first versions of it, I was really excited because it's like, I can use PHP, which I like, and it's what I like. I've been using for a long time. But it looks like it can do all the same things that Ruby on Rails can. And now it's crazy, like how much stuff you get with Laravel. So yeah, I was pretty early on that train as well. Actually, when I started like freelancing, and if you Googled Laravel and Copenhagen or Laravel Denmark, I think the 5 first results in Denmark was just me. Nice. Me trying to start a user group, me trying to like see if there are other Danish people in the Laravel forums, and like my own website. And so it's like, yeah, I started the user group as well in Copenhagen, which I just got like a meetup notification today. Someone else that I don't even know runs it, and it's like 200 people for like a meetup. Wow. Where I don't know like who they are, and it's something I started. It's kind of weird.
That's awesome. But you don't live in Copenhagen anymore, right?
Nope. I live in Scotland in the UK.
How did that happen?
Yeah, it's not because of the weather. Yeah, so like my fiance is doing her PhD over here, and yeah, so at least while she's doing that, we're going to be living here, enjoying the great Scottish outdoors and the cheap cost of living.
I see. Okay, yeah. Interesting. But you mentioned before the call that you used to be a digital nomad for a while.
Yeah, I kind of did, like accidentally. I really don't like the phrase digital nomad. But yeah, actually, I started WP Pusher when I was in Thailand, in Chiang Mai. And the reason I went out there was because I wanted to go to university there, actually, and do a master's degree. So during my undergrad, I did like a semester abroad in Morocco, and I just really, really loved it. Like I completely immersed myself in the culture, and like even today, a lot of my good friends are like Moroccans I met back then. And then I was like, I wonder if I could do the same thing for my master's degree. So I found a really cool university in northern Thailand, and I applied for it and got accepted. Traveled out there, and then like a week before this university thing is going to start, we get an email, and it's like, hey, there's like 2 people signed up. So that was me and my friend for this course. So we're not going to run it. And it's like, that's kind of awkward. So we just decided to I decided to stay in Chiang Mai. And then I just had some client projects and stuff I started working on from a co-working space. I had the idea for WP Pusher, so I started working on that a bit as well. Yeah, so it was built out there. I have some crazy war stories from Thailand and traveling.
You could probably share them sometime in the future. Like next time we meet, you have to tell them.
Yeah, man, over a pint. Some of the stuff is. I almost ended up in jail in Thailand, but that's a story for another time.
Wow.
They thought I was working illegally.
Which was kind of true if you were consulting from there?
Not really. It's not really. Yeah, that's a long story. It's a long story. That's a short answer. Is there like, if anyone is listening to this podcast and they're like, digital nomads for like, 5, 6 years ago, they can probably remember this thing because it's like, we were like 20 people or 10 people or something like that being shoved into a minivan and driven to the police station in Chiang Mai. The whole like co-working space closed down. So I think like old school digital nomads will remember this story.
Oh, didn't hear about that yet, but like sounds like quite an adventure.
Yep.
So you mentioned you're part of Tiny Seed. How's that going for you so far? Like, I think it's like 5 or 6 months in. What are your experiences?
About halfway through. It's been amazing. Like, I'm a really big fan of Tiny Seed. It's exceeded all my expectations, honestly. Yeah, it's been really good, man. I'm so happy I got that opportunity. Obviously the money is great. I mean, they basically buy your time, right? So you can do this full time and focus on your business. It's kind of like a luxury. And then the community there is really good. We just had our retreat in Croatia before MicroConf, which was really good. It's good to hang out with people, and we have a lot of really productive and constructive like masterminds every week, and there's just a really strong sense of community that I really appreciate. There's also some really cool mentors. I think I'm probably one of the companies that get less value from the mentors currently because I'm so early with Branch. It's like almost a little bit too early for Tiny Seed. If the only reason they let me in is because I had WP Pusher, right? So I already had some revenue and I had a little bit of a track record. But usually they like to see a little bit of revenue as well. And Branch was essentially pre-revenue when I joined, and it kind of still is. Only a few customers there. So yeah, it's pretty obvious like the things I need to do with Branch right now. But like when you get a little bit further ahead and you have like, a support person and like a paid ads thing going on and like all these different things, it's really cool, I think, for those people to have the mentors in Tiny Seed because they're like experts in all these different things. For me, it's mostly like the motivational part. And like when I freak out, I have Rob's Calendly link, and it's like, that's unreal. Kind of, you just like schedule a call with someone like him and he will like calm you down. And that's kind of like, you also get paid to do that. It's insane.
You get paid to freak out and get calmed down.
Yeah, exactly. That's like running a startup, right?
Yeah. So you mentioned you do weekly calls and stuff. Like, how much time does like just participating in Tiny Seed take away from building the product?
Not a lot. So the weekly calls is like an hour and 15 minutes sometimes, and that's really all there is to it. And like people pop in and out because maybe they had a demo or something like that was scheduled at the same time. So it's not like everyone, like it's never everyone on those calls, but it's most people. But yeah, in terms of how much you get back in, like, whenever you get stuck with something and you just like jump into Slack and someone will help you, I think that makes up for it easily. But yeah, the most like time expensive thing is probably going on the retreats. But then again, it's like a business expense to like, in January, it's in Key West. I'm actually not going to go because I have way too much travel already this year. But it's like you get a business trip to Key West or like Croatia or whatever. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. Especially if you have the money to pay for it, which you kind of get as well. So
yeah, I mean, that's part of the budget, I guess.
Yeah. So what do you think, where do you get the most value from? Like, is it just the community or like having the money in the bank and being able to just sleep at night knowing that you won't go bankrupt in a month?
The money is nice, but it's almost like these days money is almost a commodity, I think. Like if you're doing well with your startup, you could probably find someone to give you money. What I think is really cool is, I mean, the mentorship of the community, and not so much like, for me, as I mentioned, not so much, like calling an AdWords expert, but more like the mentorship between like the founders and like the Tiny Seed team with Rob, Einar, and Tracy. And yeah, even like some of the investors are pretty active in the Slack and like super supportive. And yeah, that's the part that really matters for me. And it's been the most surprising, I guess, like how I remember before I joined Tiny Seed, one of my worries was like, what if it's a bunch of weirdos? Like, what if I don't like the other people? Like, I mean, honestly, it's going to be a long year if you don't get along.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always just decide not to show up and just like, get the money and kind of be an ass a little bit. But I mean,
yeah.
But I thought about that the other day. Like, I remembered having that worry, and then I just realized it hadn't come up once, like after the program started, because everyone has been super cool. And yeah, I think there's like some shared values between people who choose to join something like Tiny Seed. Yeah.
So what do you think that values are? Like, what are the values people should have? Or
like, don't kill yourself. It's like a big one. like I like a couple of months ago, like I shared this on the podcast as well. Like I was going through some kind of like rough times, like being stressed out, and when you're running a thing and it's early on, like it's easy to freak out about like, is this going to work? Like when is like these things I hope was going to happen, when are they going to happen? And one of the other founders in TinySeed proposed that we set up like a hashtag wellness channel to talk about like mental health and stuff like that. And specifically because he was like, Peter, on the last cohort call, it was so obvious that you were freaking out and you were not in a good space. And I think it's really important for us to like talk about this and be like let us know if like there's anything we could do and stuff like that. And that kind of like is just not what I expect for like, like the traditional like VC track and like, go big or bust or whatever it is. And I don't know, people have lives, and it's like a big part of the TinySeed Slack is people, sharing pictures of their families and their dogs and like what they had for dinner and stuff like that. And it's like, when you share something like that, you're basically saying, I'm not working right now. I'm hanging out with my family and I'm proud that like I'm doing this thing. And people, they like that.
That's a nice community to be part of. Yeah. So
yeah, you should think about joining, man.
Yeah, we should. We actually are thinking about it. What I wanted to ask is, with the program being halfway done, what are your goals for like the next 4, 5, 6 months, the official end of the program?
Yeah. My goal is the same as when I started. It's basically to get to product market fit and have like a solid group of like paying customers that are happy with the product, and kind of like prove that this thing worked. Because I feel like I've kind of like, before I joined TinySeed, I kind of saw pretty good signs that people want a thing like this. And, a lot of people are already paying for CI/CD tools also in the WordPress space. But like, I haven't really proved that I can build it and people want to, buy my thing. So I still have a lot of work to do, fortunately.
Well, and like, what happens if you don't make that goal? Are you going to shut it down, or
they're going to crush my company? No, I mean, I'll probably have to pivot a little bit.
But to be decided, I guess.
I mean, I believe that I can make this work somehow. And I think it's a matter of like tweaking things and like building the right things and doing customer development and research. And I mean, there's the way I think about these things is there is a process you can follow. Like there is a playbook. And I mean, unless you're building something completely crazy that no one has ever paid for, if you're strategic about it, and this is something Matt and I talk about a lot on the podcast, like if you're strategic about these things and you come up with a plan, follow it, and then if it doesn't work, you adjust the plan and you try it again. And then like in theory, like as long as you have runway, you can keep doing that. And then eventually it will work. But it might be like you run out of money before that happens, or you might have to do like a pretty significant pivot or something like that. But I mean, I don't think there's a world where I don't make like some sort of product work.
Yeah.
That's the thing I care about right now, is doing that. So I'll find a way.
Yeah. So even if it takes a little bit longer than the next 6 months, you just like keep going. And
yeah, like tweaking. The way I think about it, the TinySeed, like end of the TinySeed year is like their deadline, or like that's a date they care about. But this is only the start of my company. That's like an arbitrary date to me. And it's like, it makes sense for them to have like concrete goals and stuff for that. But for me, that's like an arbitrary date that doesn't really mean a lot. Like, I mean, some things are going to change because I'm not going to have like a TinySeed call every week, but it's not like they're going to withdraw the money from my bank account. And unless I start burning more than I do now, I'll still have money left when TinySeed is over. Because until I know the thing that's working and where I can spend the money, I'm going to sit on this money and I'm not going to spend it. And probably a lot of investors would, push you to spend the money, but I'm not ready to do it yet. And people have strong opinions about these things, but until I know like a good place to spend it, I'm sitting on it. I don't know the next time someone is going to give me 120K.
Yeah, that's true. And I think one of the one of the concerns about Tiny Seed I have is basically you're in a good position with having something on the side that still pays a lot of your bills and gets you some revenue. But if you're basically joining it and basically having to burn through the investment just to pay for your expenses, and let's say you burn all of it in that year, what happens? Like, do you have to go back to consulting again, like after enjoying a year of working on your product and it not quite working out? But then I feel like going back into the old rut is a tough one.
I don't see it that way, but I mean, it could be true. Like the way I talked to someone about this today, actually, and he actually said he wasn't sure because he had revenue. So he was like, I'm not really sure why I need 100K. And I was like, for me, like the way I see it, it's like the question is, are you willing to essentially give roughly 10% of your company, get like, an amount of money and basically make a bet with that? And it's like, are you willing to risk at a slice of your company to like, make a few big bets and see if they work out? That's kind of like how I would see it. And yeah, like, I think like your job in Tiny Seed is to figure out it's a whole year. Like that's pretty nice, right? You have a year to figure out what you're going to do. If you don't make it work in a year, like either you have some sort of traction and you raise more money, which is one way to solve the problem, or like you make it work and you start making money or something like that, and then you can keep running it, or you find out that it's actually a really bad idea and they made the wrong investment. I don't like when I look at the companies in the batch right now, it's hard for me to see. I'm not talking about my own company right now, but it's hard for me not to see how they aren't going to work out, like at least to some extent. And I think that's part of what Tiny Seed does. Like they invest in something that's already kind of like working out a little bit. Mm-hmm. But yeah, honestly, that's not what I would worry about right now. Like if someone is going to give you money so you can work on your company and like keep doing your thing for a year, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. That sounds pretty good. That's
yeah, I also get a referral fee. No, I don't.
You do?
I don't.
I see. I see.
I try to convince them because I'm convincing a lot of people to apply.
So they are probably drowning in applications by now.
I'm not sure what the numbers are actually. The only thing I know is Rob said he wanted fewer applications this year because they were drowning last year.
I'm not sure if that will work out for him.
Well, fewer but better maybe.
Yeah, maybe, but I have a feeling that like for us it was like last year we were like, I don't know, let's see how this works out, and this year we are really thinking about it and we'll probably send in an application. So yeah.
Yeah, man. Good luck.
I think it's only going to be more applications than fewer, especially like now that you see like what you're missing out on. Because like a year ago, it was like this, mysterious thing that nobody knows what's actually going to happen there and how's the community like, how's the mentorship like. And now there are people like you telling us what we're missing out on, which I feel like is only incentivizing more people to apply.
Yeah, the FOMO, right?
Yeah,
you want to join the cool parties.
The cool parties, true. Yeah, that was actually one of the reasons at MicroConf. Yeah, always the cool group and the rest of us.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Cool. I think if you don't have anything else you want to share, I think we should wrap it.
I have some feedback for Userlist if you have time. No, just kidding.
Sure, yeah, the message preview thing is in the works.
Oh, this is something else.
Oh, interesting. What is it?
It's on the mobile design.
Ah, yeah, the non-existing mobile design. Yeah, it's something I should work on.
Yeah, man, I showed you in Croatia. Userlist is like my fourth most visited page on my phone.
Yeah, and I think that's crazy, especially because it doesn't work on mobile very well.
I check it like 50 times a day, maybe, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that's probably around that number.
Interesting. Yeah. I think I should just like fix the mobile version a little bit so it doesn't look as ugly as it does today.
Yeah, the modals on mobile.
The modals, yeah, I can see that. Those are horrible. Yeah. They're not even nice on the desktop.
Everyone should use Userlist. It's a great product. I'm a big fan.
Did the t-shirt make it to you?
Not yet. I'm waiting for
it. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay, then. Well, it was nice talking to you. Where can people find you online?
They can find me on Twitter, and my handle is Peter Suhm, so just my full name. And they can find Branch at branchci.com. That's probably...
And Out of Beta is Out of Beta FM?
Oh, outofbeta.fm. That's the most important one. That's the fun one.
Yeah, I can definitely recommend it. I enjoyed it very much.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for joining me. It was very short notice, but glad you could make it work. And talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.